I would love to talk about the Namara inscription. That's one of my favorite inscriptions, and it's from the historical content, the mystery, the language that it was written in is just such a phenomenal inscription. From in the Namara inscription, it's the funerary inscription of Mara al-Qais. And even his name is a bit of a debate. How do you say it? I've seen it spelled Emerald Qais, like the 6th century Arab poet, and some people have even made the mistake of believing they are one and the same, even though they're not totally far apart, away from each other. But in your book, or actually in the book edited by Greg Fisher, Arabs and Empires Before Islam, in the first chapter, Arabs and Empire Before the 6th century, you mentioned that his name is more correctly pronounced Maro Qais. And also, we're not sure if he is the second Lukamid king, or are there any other theories on who Mara al-Qais could be?
So it's they think he was second Lakhmid king. So
did I say?
You said Lukamid, but I mean it's actually Lakhmid.
Okay, all right. You know, Americans, we love to butcher the pronunciation of things, so please excuse me.
That's fine. Just so that it's to your listeners and viewers and so on. Yes, the evidence for it is not very strong, but it's a possibility. What he was doing at Namara, of course, is a big problem, because the inscription doesn't say that. But I have I've worked quite a lot at Namara, the site of Namara, in the days before the wars in Syria, and it has the remains of a Roman fort. So Namara is a mountain, a small mountain, an island in the middle of a wadi, a great valley that goes through. So it's got water on either side of it when you get the rains, but it's dry for most of the year. And on top of it, there is the remains of a small Roman fort, most of the stones of which were plundered to make a mausoleum in the Middle Ages. So what people often think of as the Roman fort is actually this mausoleum, but you can still see the outline of the Roman fort. But what is also interesting is that on the areas of desert around this, there are quite large areas of single stones being set up sort of at regular intervals, and great sort of lines of them like this, which look like tombstones, very much like as if they're there. And so they need, of course, to be excavated, but unfortunately the Civil War came before we could do that. But if it is there are hundreds and hundreds of them. I mean, so if it is a graveyard, it looks as if the people were all killed at the same time, all died at the same time. So that would explain if there was a battle there and he was killed and Imre Qais was, I've done it now, Imre Qais was killed in the battle. That would explain why his mausoleum is there a kilometer away from Namara itself.
And from what I understand, the Lakhmids were a vassalage of the Persian Empire, and the Al-Namara is on the Roman side.
Yeah.
But then again, in the inscription, it says that he basically seems like he was working for both. Maybe I think in your book you mentioned or in your article you mentioned that maybe at the end of his life he veered more towards the Roman side, but early on there's a possibility that he was more of a vassalage with Persia.
It's certainly possible. We don't know with the very early Lakhmids how they how much they were vassals of the Persians, because we don't actually, we have that they're only mentioned as the ancestors of people later on, of kings who later on, we don't actually have information about them themselves.
Okay.
So it's possible, and he does say in the inscription that he made his sons proxies for the Romans and the Persians, and this was a new reading, I think, of the inscription there, which you find in the Greg Fisher book. So he was clearly a very important man who, and it is infuriating that none of the classical sources mention him, but he either that or he had somebody with a great imagination writing his epitaph. But it looks as if he was able to dominate nomadic tribes as well as the settled people, the Sha'ab, and as I say, get his sons at least to work for both the Persians and the Romans. But apart from that, it's very difficult to actually put him into our knowledge of history of that area. There's one very nice, very small detail in the inscription, that the only word that isn't Arabic in the inscription is the word for son of, which is bar, which is Aramaic rather than bin. And this went on right into the early Islamic period as being, it was just one of these fossils from the Aramaic type that went on being used, rather as we use a lot of Latin fossils in English, like etc. and so on. But that's just a curiosity. I mean.